I'm AP Townley, and this is Roleplay Culture. The only thing more satisfying than leveling up your character is giving them very cool magic items that you loot from the horde of your defeated foes.
A sickness had begun to grow within him. It was a sickness of the mind.
So this is a new series of videos. We'll be looking at really cool, thematic, and sometimes underrated, magic items for certain classes. I wanted to bundle these classes together by type. We'll start with the martial characters. First, as many of them will want the same types of magic items. The exception to this is the monk. I think I'm going to put them with a different group, as they are primarily martial, but they'll be a little bit different. Let's get into it. Number 1. +1, 2, and 3 magic weapons. Let's get this one out of the way. These magic weapons give a +2 attack and damage rolls based on their rarity. Uncommon for +1, rare for +2, very rare for +3. It's not sexy or super powerful, but it's very useful and consistent. Your martial characters, so you're going to be using weapons to defeat your foes, so use them. There are a few things about the enhanced weapons that might not be very obvious. For one, unlike many of the other magic weapons, like flame tongues and frost brands, these weapons don't require attunement. Though attuning to an item only takes a short rest, you can only be attuned to 3 items at a time, and these weapons don't take up one of those slots. Another thing is the importance of martial characters obtaining magic weapons as early as possible. It's very debilitating to fight an enemy that has damage resistances. Many tougher enemies have resistance to non-magic weapon damage, meaning they only take half damage from them, or worse, if they're just flat out immune to that damage type. Magic weapons, especially the plus weapons, get around that defense. There's nothing more frustrating than wailing on an enemy and doing diddly squat. Number 2 is Adamantine Armor. So, if we're a martial character, then we're probably going to wear some armor. Probably medium or higher. Now, I know the Barbarians have their unarmored defense that allows them to use their Constitution modifier in place of armor. But I'm going to be honest, I almost never use this. You might also argue that Barbarians are going to take hits no matter what when they're using their reckless attack feature, giving them advantage on their attack rolls, but also giving their enemies advantage on attack rolls against them. But honestly, that makes this magic item even more important. Here's why. Adamantine Armor is simple. All it does is turn any critical hits against the wearer into normal hits. The blow still lands, and you still take damage, but the damage is normal damage, and it's not doubled or worse, like some criticals are. Critical hits are nasty. You can give your character as high an AC as possible, and it won't matter because criticals always land. Adamantine Armor just protects you against that. Yes, even the Barbarian. They grant advantage to their enemies and thus are twice as likely to take critical hits. They might need it more than most, honestly. And of course, Paladins fighters love this armor too. It's uncommon, and it doesn't require attunement, so more access than most magic armors. Remember, plus armors, unlike their weapon counterparts, have a rarity 1 step higher, so a +1 armor is a rare item. If you fight something like a fire giant that does 4d10 plus 7 damage with a rock, and it crits, which makes it 8d10 plus 7, that might even drop a character. So preventing that extra damage could save a life. Number 3 is Winged Boots. If you're playing one of those martial characters, you're probably going to be a melee warrior, though I admit there are some good archer builds for fighters. Most of the time, you're going to be swinging an axe in someone's face. The problem with that, though, is what happens when your enemy is flying, or at the top of a building, or in some other way outside of your reach. So you need a way to close that distance to those enemies. And there are a couple of ways to do that. Misty Step, Dimension Door, the Flying Spell. but the winged boots are probably the best and safest option, in my opinion. They're uncommon rarity, which is still pretty accessible. They let you fly up to 4 hours in 1-minute intervals. For every 12 hours not used, they regain 2 hours of flying. By being able to duel with that dragon in the air, when it's just strafing your party with its breath weapon, it could save you all. You can also choose a broom of flying, which in some ways is even better. It doesn't require attunement, unlike the winged boots, and has unlimited flying, though it does have a weight limit. Seems better, right? Well, there's one problem with it. If you're knocked unconscious or incapacitated, you're probably just going to fall off your broom to your doom. But the winged boots will keep you aloft, so consider that scenario. But you often don't get to choose, so if you end up with a broom of flying or a potion of flying or whatever, just be happy because it will let you pursue your enemies when you normally wouldn't be able to. Number 4, the Horns of Valhalla.
No! I am awaited! I am awaited in Valhalla!
There's no question that changing the action economy of the game is very powerful. Putting more bodies on the board that can take attacks, as well as make them, is a huge swing in the favor of the summoner. But that's something meant more for casters for the most part, which is why martial characters want this item very badly. There are 4 of these horns of various rarities that don't require attunement. It takes an action to use, and once it's used, you can't use it again for 7 days, which does kind of suck, but considering what it does, it's probably fair. This is definitely the thing we break out when we're really in trouble. So what does it do? And what are the requirements? Because yes, there are some requirements that must be met. The first of these horns, the Silver Horn, is rare. It has no requirements. A little more on that later. And it summons 2d4 plus 2 Berserkers for an hour. Berserkers have 67 hit points, have the reckless attack feature like Barbarians, and do 1d12 plus 3 damage. And you're going to summon, on average, 7 of them. Wow. Elsewise, this is the only horn that doesn't have a requirement to use. So anyone can use it. The Brass Horn is also rare. It summons 3d4 plus 3 Berserkers for an average of 10. But this horn has a requirement. You need to be proficient with simple weapons. That doesn't mean you have to be, you need to be. The horn will, very unfortunately, work for you if you don't meet this requirement, which is not good. Because if you don't meet the requirement and try to summon the Berserkers anyway, it'll work, but they'll turn on you immediately. And that will not be fun times for you and your friends. The Bronze Horn is very rare, and it summons 4d4 plus 4 Berserkers, for an average of 14. It's basically your own army at this point. This one has a requirement as well. You must be proficient with medium armor. Their requirements aren't cumulative, so you don't necessarily need proficiency with simple weapons for this as well. Admittedly, that sounds pretty rare, being proficient with medium armor but not proficient with simple weapons. Maybe a Mountain Dwarf Wizard or something, but for martial characters, it's not a problem. The final horn, the Iron Horn, is legendary. Requires proficiency with all martial weapons, and it summons 5d4 plus 5 Berserkers for an average of 17. Probably aren't too many fights that this many allies can't get you out of. I also really like how the increased rarities of the horns are made for less ornamental but more weaponized metals. So starting with silver but ending with iron. That just sounds very thematic for something that comes from Valhalla. Number 5 are Cloaks of Protection. There are many ways to protect your warriors. Armor, shields, just one facet of that equation. This is another simple magic item that I think gets overlooked. This uncommon cloak requires attunement, gives +1 to your AC. That's nice and all, but nothing to scream about, especially since it requires attunement. But there's another part of this item that I think some either forget about or just kind of gloss over as unimportant. The Cloak of Protection also gives you +1 to all 6 of your saving throws. In my opinion, this is the most underrated part of this item, by far, and it's by far the most powerful feature. There's nothing scarier than a vampire dominating the mind of your beast of a barbarian or your polearm wielding fighter and then turning them on the party. I mean, you want to talk about a serious turn of fortunes? I mean, that's the thing that often gets missed by the players. They become so focused on doing as much damage as possible or reducing the damage they take by having as high an AC as possible or by some other ability, they tend to ignore their saving throws. Sure, you can be missed by attack after attack or cutting damage in half by raging, but until you fail that wisdom saving throw against a whole person, then all attacks against you have advantage, and those that hit, and they will hit, are automatic criticals. So shoring up your saving throws can be very important, especially against mind control effects like Dominate Person. That might be the worst thing that can happen, even more so than your character dying. At least then you aren't killing your friends. There's one curious omission in this item. Unlike other enhanced items like +1 weapons, armors, and shields, there's no higher level version of it. No rare +2 or very rare +3 versions of the cloak. But of course, that doesn't stop us from making those items ourselves. The template's already there, so it's no extra work on our parts. So yeah, Cloaks of Protection. More than just AC boosters. A lot more. So those are a few of the great magic items for martial characters in D&D 5e. If you want more of these videos for this series, then you're going to have to subscribe, smash that like button, ring the bell, share with your friends, leave comments below, tell me what your favorite magic items are, and I'll see you in the parlor.